by offering our most humble obeisance under the lotus feet of our beloved Gurus. Unto Sri Guru Pada Padmaniti Lita Bhavishta Om Vishnu Pada Asta Tatsat Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada and Sri Guru Pada Padmaniti Lita Bhavishta Om Vishnu Pada Asta Tatsat Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Raj under our exalted Guru Partner Guru Varga, all the Sama Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. So, as Rasik Mohan Prabhu has said, this little festival is named after the grand festival at Kheturi Kirtan. Oh, some 450 years ago, in the beautiful land of Gaudadesh. Very important festival. And understanding the history and intent and lessons from this festival will give us more impetus and more appreciation of what we're trying to emulate here. Because that's what bhakti is. We are in the stage of sadhana bhakti, but sadhana bhakti and Shuddha bhakti are non-different in the sense that the same activity is being performed. But in one level, it's being performed while we're conditioned with the intention of becoming purified, so that we can do that same activity in the purified state in a mood of great love and happiness. And so, we're also going to perform a version of this Kheturi festival, and if we understand some of the major points of that festival, then we can actually meditate on this and try to take more advantage. Because bhakti, it's very important to understand that in the practice of bhakti, it's not just the activity that's important. It's the intent and the mood, the feeling within the heart. And a lot of times this is misunderstood and neglected. And people perform the activity of bhakti, but with a bad mood. Bad mood. That's not good. Now, we're trying to cultivate a mood, affectionate mood, a mood of loving service. Service not just to our Guru, but to those who are serving our Guru, those who are serving the servants of our Guru. This is the nature of bhakti, a community of sevaks, right? Not a community of chiefs, but a community of Indians. Not Indians just from India. That's an American saying, you know. It means leaders and followers. We want to be followers, and that way we lead. That way we lead. So this Kheturi festival that we hear about actually had its beginnings a long time before that. A long time before. And when I'm talking about it, I want you to think about this festival and how it also had its beginnings a long time before. Okay? Because we're following in the footsteps of these great acharyas. So when did the Kheturi festival begin? Well, it began in the heart of Mahaprabhu. One day he was bathing with Nityananda in the Padma River. And all of a sudden, he began to call out the name Narottam, Narottam, with great ecstasy. And nobody could understand, who's this Narottam? Who's this Narottam? And then they asked him later, and he said, oh, in the future, in this place, a great, great devotee of mine will be born. And I'm leaving something for him. And he called the goddess Padmavati of the river and said, I'm leaving something with you. I'm leaving my own prem, my own special love. And I want you to hold it for one special devotee who will come in the future. And when he comes and bathes in the river, I want you to give it to him. And she said, well, how will I know? How will I know who this person is? And he said, you will know because as soon as he steps into your river, you will overflood with prem yourself, and your waters will rise up and flood the banks. So, okay. And so, years later, young prince was born in that town of Kheturi, near the river, and that prince was Narottam. And from a very young age, he exhibited all the signs of a devotee. He didn't have interest in material affairs. He was vastly learned, very detached, very exceptional behavior, everything about him. It's going to be like exceptional behavior. And It's very distracting. Thank you. Exceptional behavior. Everybody loved him. His parents, all of the people of the city. But he was very interested in Mahaprabhu. From the time of his youth, he had great, great love for Mahaprabhu, having heard stories of him. And one day, he went to bathe in that river. It's a little distant from the town, and when he went in and took bath, all of a sudden he became overwhelmed with incredible emotions of love of Mahaprabhu, love of Radha and Krishna. Simultaneously, the river began to rise and rise and rise and flood the banks. And when he came out of the river, he was transformed. Even his complexion was changed. He was more golden and even more beautiful than ever, because he was filled with this love, this prema. And the story of Narottam, of course we know, just like Raghunath Das, he ran away from home, ran away from his wealthy father and uncle, and he went to Vrindavan, and there he took shelter under the guidance, as he'd been inspired to do, by the Lord himself, under the guidance of Lokanath Das Goswami. We don't have time to get into the whole story of Narottam Das, but then he was put under the guidance and instruction of Jiva Goswami. And at that time was another great devotee, who he was to become lifelong friends with, Srinivasacharya. And after some time, Dukhi Krishnadas, who later came known as Shyamananda, came. And these three formed an inseparable bond together of service. They were so close. Others gradually came into their circle as well, but these three, at a certain point, they lived in Vrindavan for many, many years under the guidance of Jiva Goswami and their gurus. Lokanath Das for Narottam, Gopal Bhatta for Srinivas, and Shyamananda was a disciple of Hridaya Chaitanya, and he was put under the shiksha of Jiva Goswami. But they were very close, closer than brothers. And then one day they were given the order, because at the request of Janava Thakurani, as Rasik had mentioned, after the disappearance of Mahaprabhu, the conceptions that Mahaprabhu had taught were becoming eroded. And there many different kinds of groups sprang up, different apasiddhantas. It happened so quickly that even in the biography, Chaitanya Bhagavat by Vrindavan Das Thakur, he mentions many of them directly in his book, even though that was written very quickly after the disappearance of Mahaprabhu. Already these things had sprung up. So Janava Thakurani, the eternal consort of Nityananda Prabhu, had requested to Jiva Goswami, please compile the literatures that have been written by our Goswamis under the order of Mahaprabhu and send them to us here, because we have to establish, the proper siddhanta, the proper understanding. And so he ordered these three, Shyamananda, Srinivas, and Narottam, to take copies of these books, laboriously put by hand, loaded in a cart, and sent them off. But on the way, the story, these books were waylaid, stolen by a king who made his living by robbing rich merchants as they came through the area. And his astrologer told him that was a caravan coming with the most valuable treasure in the universe. So he stole the cart, only to find out it was a bunch of books. And he was very disappointed. So they just put the books in a go down, and then later, when the three discovered the books were lost, they became so distressed. Now that's first lesson, actually second lesson. First lesson is that these three personalities were born to come together and do this service. Right? This was their destiny. And for everybody here, you can't see it, you can't understand it, but you were born to come here and participate in this festival. This is your destiny. Right? We might not be at the level of these personalities, we're certainly not. But we have a journey, we have a destiny, and this is part of it. Right? And then they had to undergo this incredible tribulation in order to resecure the books finally, and then get them to place of Janava Thakurani, place of Kheturi, places where they're going to preach so that they could be copied and spread everywhere. Then, Narottam, he stayed in Kheturi for many, many, many years. The others were going here and there preaching as the order of Jiva Goswami. They're going to Orissa, going to other places, Assam, etc. But he stayed in Kheturi, where his brother, younger brother, cousin brother was now the king, Santosh. And everybody in the city or the town became his disciple practically. And his brother was very supportive, and they built a temple, and he gathered many deities together. He wanted to have a great installation. And he had also been given inspiration by Mahaprabhu to have this festival. So this festival, Kheturi, had many purposes: to bring the Vaishnavas together, to establish the appropriate canon, the appropriate teachings of Mahaprabhu, but really to show that this is what Mahaprabhu came to give. Not just philosophically, but when you read in Bhakti Ratnakara about the nature of the festival itself, the Vaishnava etiquette, the receiving of the guests, the way that the devotees and the Vaishnavas dealt with each other, the loving dealings, extraordinary example. Such a perfect and beautiful exhibition of a Vaishnava culture. And what united them and what made the whole experience extraordinary was the kirtan. Now Narottam, actually those three, they're all very famous for their kirtans. I'm not musically educated, so I can't explain it in that context, but they're all very, very expert. And when all the Vaishnavas came together, again, even the festival, there was a little doubt, because when Narottam had originally decided to do this, he wanted to install 6 deities and the temple, and he invited Srinivasa Choi, who was the most senior, to be the chief priest and the head of it all. Janava Thakurani was invited, Shyamananda Prabhu was invited, but for a while it looked like people weren't going to make it in time. And it was very difficult to get everything together, and there was some anxiety. He was worried, oh, have I done this too soon? And also, it was on the day they wanted to have to honor the first time that the appearance day of Mahaprabhu had been celebrated. So it was like the first Gaura Purnima that they were celebrating as well. But it was a struggle. But somehow or other, everything came together. And all the Vaishnavas were received very beautiful. In fact, the Bhakta Ratnakara exclaims, everybody was really amazed because all the Vaishnavas were given individual quarters. Now, you're not given individual quarters, not yet. I don't know what you are, 5, 10, 15 in a room, but that doesn't matter. It's a start, right? It's a start. And there was very opulent and wonderful prasad. That's true. That will be. And most of all, the way the Vaishnavas dealt with each other, because there was so much appreciation and love for each of them, and for each of the value and the seva that they brought. And then the night before, Mahaprabhu would personally come to assure Narottam that he was going to appear in the kirtan and that everything was going to go all right. And the next day, when they started the kirtan, it was, as you can imagine if there were hundreds and hundreds of Srila Prabhupads and Srila Gurudevs there in the kirtan, if everybody was of that level. Imagine that. This was the kind of kirtan that they had. These were all great devotees, great Mahabhagavats, and overseen by Narottam Das and Janava Thakurani and all these others, the power of that kirtan. And they began to chant, and as Rasik Prabhu has mentioned, it became more and more powerful. Then suddenly, before all of them, Mahaprabhu appeared, dancing. And not just Mahaprabhu, Nityananda, Advaita, Gadadhar, Srivas, but all these other great personalities who had also left, Murari Gupta, Haridas Thakur, Vakeshwar Pandit, everybody's name that you read in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, they're all there. And everybody saw them. Everybody saw them. It was just astonishing. Imagine that. If we were in a kirtan right now, and all of a sudden we saw Srila Prabhupada, we saw Srila Gurudev, they're coming in and dancing. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada. You know, what would you do? You know, you wouldn't have any hairs left on your body. They'd all fly off. You know, maybe we couldn't even continue kirtan. We'd all faint. But that's what they saw. That's what they saw. And they were so overwhelmed with love and affection. And it went on for hours and hours. And then Mahaprabhu went and he embraced Narottam, embraced him, and whispered something in his ear that nobody knew. Some secret, confidential message. And he also told him, oh, you know, you are my eternal servant. You know, you're my eternal servant. You don't know, you know, I've hidden from you so much of who you are, but you are always with me. So then the kirtan continued, and then in the evening or later in the day, they installed the deities, 6 deities. Let's see, there was a deity of Mahaprabhu, Gauranga, deity called Radhakanta, Radha Mohan, Braj Mohan, Krishna Balabi, and one other. Anyway, Anyway, 6 beautiful, beautiful deities. Everybody was so appreciative, and Srinivasacharya oversaw everything, and the deities were installed with Srimati Radhika alongside. Beautiful, beautiful festival. And the kirtan went on all night long. Thakur loved to hear that. But the difference is their kirtan was, after they did it all night long, then they all went to Mangalarti. Then they all took their bath, and then they all went, you know, and continued their seva for the next day. They didn't sleep, you know. So if you want to do all-night kirtan, you know, no sleep allowed. Certainly not in the late morning or, you know, the afternoon. But the basis of it all was the kirtan. And that's really what our acharyas have come to do. I just read this quote recently of Srila Prabhupada, and he had sent, it was a letter, I can't remember, but he was exhorting the devotees. This was some years now into his mission when a lot of other things were going on, and book distribution was ramping up, and the street parties that we had seen were not going out anymore because everybody was going on book distribution. But Srila Prabhupada wasn't satisfied with that. He said, this Sankirtan, this public chanting, this is our main business. This is that which has the power to change the hearts, the minds and hearts. And this sound will go out. And this doesn't say that the others aren't important. They're all, you could say, equally important. They're all limbs of this Sankirtan movement. But to understand the real power of Harinam, that anybody who sees it, anybody who hears it, they're having an irrevocable change in their heart. The Bhakti Sukriti, the seed of Bhakti, the Bhakti Lata Bij, this is coming for the first time. And even in one lifetime, you know, people will change. And many people that are just waiting to have that seed awakened will hear that kirtan, and within a short time, they're part of a community. Part of a community, hearing, chanting, dancing, making it part of their lives. So this is very good that we have this generation of people, which is mostly younger people here. I think I'm the only old guy here, right? Right? Yeah. Wow, okay. The only fossil here. Everybody else is young. And so I'm just exhorting you not to abandon, but to embrace this concept of kirtan. Keep it going. This is a wonderful first year. I could imagine how this could grow and grow year after year after year, because I've seen how that happens. Whether it's the Vrindavan and Navadvip parikrams, how simply they started during Srila Prabhupada's time, or Srila Prabhupada, how they had been done by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada. All of our acharyas, so many of them started simply and built and built and built. So this, right now you can look around and you can say, hey, 20, 30 people here. Next year might be double or triple. And I could see in the future thousands of people here. Why not? Why not? Chanting, dancing, singing with deep emotion, deep affection, and developing the bonds and the relationships that are so important to Vaishnav community. Right? Vaishnav community. It's all based on that. Like this morning, talking with Amal Prabhu here, and I was teasing him a little bit, and then I said, well, where do you live? Where were you born? And he said, oh, I was born in North Carolina. And he said, I grew up in the community. He said, I don't know if you ever heard of my parents. And he says, Apurva and Kamalini. I said, Apurva? We were bhaktas together. We washed pots. We cleaned the kitchen. We went on the first traveling Sankirtan party out in New York together. We did so much seva together over the years. I know him so well, so well. And I think it's so cool that he's here. And then I know there's other people here whose parents I know. It's really wonderful. So that's all I have to say about this. And looking forward to 2 or 3 days of wonderful Kirtan, Radhastami on Monday and Tuesday, depending. Double header, right. We're celebrating it both days because there are different calendars. And you can't honor Srimati Radhika too much. And we'll begin that honoring by this Kirtan today. All right. Go up, Primananda.